Check. Check, check, check. 2, 1, 2. Check, check. Hello. Starting in just a minute or two. The class. What's going on, Gobo C? Oh, everybody. Starting in just 1 minute. I'll give everybody a minute to catch up. All right. Everybody, just 1 minute before we start, and then we will start and try and start right on time as much as possible. Apparently, you guys and gals do too. Everybody logging on right at 1. Excellent. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. People come in as they can. Today, we're going to be going over the midterm. As you know, the grades are out and stuff, but a few announcements ahead of time. All right, announcements. Grades are out both for midterm and for the contributions. So go check those out. They're on Blackboard. They're on Gradescope. Check them out. Now, next up, and very importantly, your projects, you still need to continue to make progress, okay? There will be other deliverables throughout the semester that may be similar to this deliverable, where you have to show that you've been making progress and committing and doing things related to your project. So, even during this time, you need to continue to make consistent contributions to your project. Now, I don't mean spending 40 hours a week on your project, but I do mean trying to do something on your project at least 2 times a week, okay? At least 2 times a week, doing something on your project, making some commit or some contribution, attending some meeting, things like that will be good, but make sure you want to have some record of your contributions. And finally, related to that, next Monday, so not in 2 days, but the class after that, there will be a project workday. And related to the project deliverables we've been talking about, I would strongly recommend y'all to make contributions on next Monday, because we may at some point have a project deliverable that checks whether you actually did anything on that Monday. So I'd encourage you to use that workday when there will be no class to make some contributions to your project. So this is a free day, no class, and you are encouraged to make contributions to your project. In fact, I would strongly recommend that you make contributions to your project on that day, because we may be checking for it later on one of the deliverables. All right, let's see. I wanted to once again just give you guys and gals a chance to give me your thoughts on the midterm, any thoughts that you have whatsoever about the midterm. Let me know by entering in on Menti. What thoughts did you have on the midterm? Really, any random thoughts you have on it. We're just going to discuss the midterm today, go over answers, things like that. But what are your thoughts on the midterm? Let me know what you think. There's at least 45 of you here on the stream, so should see at least a few answers. I know some of y'all had some thoughts. Anybody have some thoughts on the midterm? Good. Thank you for sharing. This class is a lot more fun if y'all do go ahead and give us feedback, so we can work on wording our questions a little bit better. Some people thought it was a good summary of what we learned so far. Some people liked it. Most people don't like midterms, but I'm glad you liked it. About what I expected and prepared for, that's good. Sad I got number 2 wrong. Yeah, it happens. We all make mistakes, don't worry. There's still lots of opportunity to do well in this class. This is a good comment, like a very interesting comment. I think having a time test and programming is a bad mix, because I ran into random errors I couldn't figure out. And in fact, this is kind of how the test was designed, though. I hate to tell you. What we wanted to do is make sure that you were familiar enough with Android Studio, meaning you'd been working in it enough to be familiar with it, to know the random problems that you're likely to run into, and to be able to fix them quickly. If you've been working with Android Studio any amount of time, unless there was some kind of catastrophic failure, you should have been able to do those things on the test well within the time. And if you're not comfortable with those, don't worry, there'll be other chances to get good grades in this class. But that is something that you're going to definitely want to be comfortable with, Android Studio, and doing things quickly with Git and Android Studio before the end of class. That was intentional. I know we may not like it, but that was an intentional choice on how to test you guys and gals. Great comment though, thank you. All right, I feel rewarded for studying everything that I studied. There were questions for, great. It was okay, honest, I like it. Few of the questions were not worded well. I hear that feedback, and I've heard that from a couple of you now, and thank you for that feedback. I will try and improve that for next time, okay? We'll be more careful about how we word the questions. We're not trying to trick you at all. We're trying to keep these very straightforward, so sorry if the wording was a little tricky on some of them. Some people did not like using their app for the midterm, and I can understand this. The reason that we did use the app is that at this point you should know how to make changes to your app and then blow away those changes, okay? Any changes that you make to your app, you should be able to blow those away. If you don't know how to do that with Git, that is something you should learn how to do. Just basically revert the changes. Get rid of those changes. Do not commit them. Let's see. Can we go over testing again? That was hard. Yep, we can talk about testing. That was one that I saw lots of people struggle with, so we will. And some people liked how it tested the understanding of the concepts. It didn't try to give us anything crazy that wanted us to combine them all. This speaks to the point that we're not trying to trick you with this test. We are just trying to assess what you know so far, okay? So we're not trying to be tricky at all. We're just trying to assess what you've learned so far. And all right, so great comments. It's really cool that you guys and gals are interactive in this class. That keeps it a lot more interesting for me and for y'all, I hope. Now, I just assessed all of you on the midterm. And I'd encourage you to now give me feedback on this class so far. Now, just a word before you give feedback, these are anonymous, so I won't know who it is, but you don't want to, I try not to be mean when I give you feedback, so try and be polite and respectful when you give me feedback. I'm a person too. You don't want to see me cry. But do give me feedback on this class so far, what you like, what you don't like. I think you can submit multiple things, and that is feedback that I will take and try and make the second half of this class even better than the first. So give me your feedback on this class so far. It's a good time for me to check in and see what's working for y'all, what's not working for y'all. And I take this feedback seriously. So go ahead. Go ahead and give me some feedback. Try not to make me cry, although apparently some of you want to see me cry. And yeah, let me know what you think. And I'll take these very seriously. Yeah, and this is one that's interesting. So I'm reading these as they come in. Some people are saying the class is going well for them, but their group situation is hard. And this is just this is a hard problem for all of us. Like, it's hard for me to deal with this because switching groups in the middle of the semester is not great. So your group may be underperforming. Please know that the people that are underperforming will be dinged severely on their grades for that. We're looking at who's committing and who's not. But just try and soldier on with you and whoever is actually doing things with your project. Remember, we are not looking for, we're not looking as much at the end product, although we want you to make as good a product as possible. We are looking at how you're approaching your work, how much you're committing, the quality of your commits, things like that. So I know these group situations are tough sometimes because some people just, don't want to contribute as much as others. but we are going to try and make grading as fair as possible. This is a great comment, and this is something I've been thinking of lately. Sometimes we prefer more explanation of the technical ideas in lecture and less time devoted to class questions and interactivity. Yeah, that's something I'm going to try and spend more time on. The interactivity is important because it helps get the concepts into your mind a little bit deeper. But I can understand this comment. That's a really interesting comment. Right. Yeah, it's hard to do this all remotely. That is a great point. All right. Yeah, so great feedback. I'm gonna read these after class. I don't want to read them all now, but this is an important point. So sometimes I'm quizzing you kind of before I've taught you, and so maybe I should do a little more teaching up front. Great point. I'll try and do a little more up front. All right. Thanks for these feedbacks. I will read through all of these after class and check all these out. Thank you so much. All right, now we're going to do a review of the lecture review of the midterm on Gradescope. I'm going to try and do this without exposing anybody's grades. I should be able to do that. Here is the overall assignment statistics, okay? The maximum, of course, was 100%. The minimum was 22.5%, and the average was 80.01%. And this is actually pretty good. I mean, in this class, I expect that this is about what I was hoping for. I expect that the exams will be harder and the project will be easier, right? So if you're doing what you're supposed to, you will usually do pretty well on the project. Like if you're doing commits, you'll do pretty well. It's not rocket science. But the exams, of course, are a little bit harder because you have to really perform under time pressure and things like that. You have to really know what you're doing. So 80% for a test, I would say, is actually right on track as a class. So that's actually pretty good. I was pretty happy with that. And in general, I want to say I was very pleased with the vast majority of these exams. Okay, there was a few people, of course, that really struggled, but in general, even the people that struggled on certain questions, overall, people seem to be having a good understanding of some of the things we've taught. The thing I want to reiterate about software engineering is it's not rocket science. It's very straightforward concepts. It's just getting through the accidental complexity of using Git, things like that can be challenging, and it seems like as a class y'all have done pretty well at getting through learning how to use Git, learning how to use Android Studio, things like that. So in general, I was pretty pleased with this. Now let me go over a few of these answers. One of the things I want to mention is we had a couple that people struggled with. For instance, what type of source code repository do we use for this class? Who can tell me what type of repository in the chat do we use for this class? What type of repository do we use for this class? Let me know in the chat. Who's got an answer? Git, exactly. So Git is the repository type we're using. GitHub is the website. I've said that several times in class. I understand that could be a little tricky, but remember, Git is the actual repository type. GitHub is the website, okay? Another one that people struggled with is question 7, which I believe was how to create a unit test. we may need to spend some more class time on that another time. We'll talk about that. I'll show you an example of that in a little while. But if you really need to learn how to create a unit test, if you ever want to be a software developer, that is a basic thing that you're going to need to know how to do. So regardless of whether you got that right or wrong on this exam, that's something that you're definitely going to want to learn how to do, so that when you go to work somewhere, somebody says, hey, create a unit test, you know how to do it. It's not hard, I promise. It just takes some effort. Okay, another one that was a little bit low, but not too low, was 8, and that was create a class diagram. I'll go over the typical problem there. And there were some really typical. There was one concept that I want to go over there that you guys kind of got wrong. Question 9 was a little low, and that was requirements. And that one is interesting. I'm very surprised that that was low. We'll talk about that more in a minute. And 12 and 14. Okay. So we're going to go over these kind of one by one and talk about what went wrong. And y'all can ask some questions and things like that. So I'm going to look in the chat because I see a couple questions. Let's see here. All right. What was the partial credit situation on the exam? Somebody's asking what was the partial credit situation on the exam. Well, on the questions where there were like create a diagram or show me screenshots or things like that, you could definitely get partial credit. But on questions that were just like, select an answer or type an answer, they were mainly either right or wrong. All right, so first I want to look at question number 7, and I'm going to do this off screen to make sure I don't expose anybody's grade real quick. Yeah, okay. Good, this is okay. Now, here is question number 7, and I want to go over kind of how this went wrong for most of you, and then we're going to look at a couple examples. Okay, so, about 16% of you just got it correct straight up. And that is actually kind of low, right? That's pretty low given, your performance on the other things. Now, I marked a lot of people as they should have the test and class in a separate package. Sometimes I couldn't tell where your test and class was because, because of your screenshot. So I didn't actually take any points off of this, but I want you to know your test should be in the test package or in the test folder, and your class that is testing should be in the actual code. Can anybody tell me why you would want your test not to be in the same folder as your actual code? Why would you want the test not to be in the same folder as your actual code? Tell me in the chat, why would you want your test to be in a different place than your actual code? Let me know in the chat. We do not want to have our tests in the same folder as our code. Why would that be? Let me know what you think. I'm happy to sit here. Aha! I see a correct answer, and it is we do not ship test. So if you have your test in the same place as your regular code, then they would be shipped, meaning they would be sent out with the program. And that would be a really weird thing to do. Like, the end user doesn't need to know about your test, and you don't want to ship those. All right, another couple things that were wrong. Some of them were just incorrect. A surprising 21% were just incorrect, meaning like they were so wrong I couldn't give partial credit. Again, that's disturbing only because such a high percentage of people got them wrong. I understand some people probably didn't get testing. A lot of people were not annotating their test, meaning they weren't using the @test annotation on the method, and therefore the unit test framework would not know to run it. So that was a problem I saw a lot. Sometimes I saw that people's tests weren't working correctly, like they didn't actually test anything. Sometimes I saw, similar to the package problem, I saw that the tests were actually inside of the class itself. Remember, you want to put it in a different place. I definitely saw code not compiling in these tests. Remember, you had access to your IDE. You should always write code that compiles. Never ever show me code that doesn't compile. As you can see, I took off a lot of points for that. If the code doesn't compile and you had access to, the compiler right there, that's a problem. And some people mixed up the actual and the expected parameters of the assertion, which I only took off a couple points for. All right, so in general, this was one of the worst questions, which is why I want to go over it in detail. Let me, off screen, I'm going to open up a couple of these in detail. So, but I don't want to show anybody's grades, so give me just a second. All right. All right, so here we go. Here's one we're going to look at. And it'll just take me a minute to get it here. All right, so let me make sure I get the chat up. Here we have the class, okay? So this is the class that somebody created, and you can see that it has a very simple method in it. It adds A and B. You can see that adds A and B and returns a result, right? So I didn't care really what this class did. I didn't care that even this is, a static class. So I didn't care about that. It's a class that you didn't even really need to instantiate. All of this is fine. Just create any class. And then I wanted to see the test. Here is the annotation. Everybody see that @test? That means that this is actually a test that's going to run. And here you can see we have the creation of the object under test, the running of the method under test, and then we compare the expected right here to the output right there, which is the actual. Okay, so the assertion at the end, kind of the setup, the execution, and the assertion. This is exactly the kind of thing that we wanted to see. Are there any questions? Just let me know in the chat about this particular thing. Like this particular example, why this one was a good answer. Any questions in the chat as to why this was a good answer? Okay, and another thing I want to mention with this one that is also evident in this one is you can see that in the Java folder right here, we have the regular class. And then here in the test, we have the test class. And somebody's asking me or commenting that they didn't realize I wanted you to run it and submit it as 2 screenshots. They thought I just wanted them to write it. I'm not, I didn't actually give credit, just to be clear. I didn't give credit for actually running it. However, it is useful for you to run it. Like if you can run your test, you would know that it compiles and you would probably know whether it works or not, right? So I wasn't giving you credit for running it and compiling it, but those are tools that would have helped you. So somebody's asking, what folder is the test under? It's under the same folder, but it's the test folder, right? So com example, Dave's midterm edition, test, that's where all the tests are. And com example, Dave's midterm edition, no test, that's where the regular code is. So there we go. That's exactly what we want this to look like. Now, I'm going to go and grab another example that is not quite as smooth. And remember, if your example is used in this, don't get out, don't get too out of sorts or anything. We are just trying to learn, okay? So don't worry about it too much if your example is used. I'm trying to keep this anonymous. Okay, I think this is anonymous. And so, for instance, here is one. Make sure I can see the chat here. Here's one that didn't do, this didn't do awful, but it didn't do great. Here we have a class called midterm where there is a grade, and you can see that, if the grade is greater than 90, then it returns this. If it's between this, it turns that, etc. So this method, that's actually good. That would have been fine to test. However, does anybody see something wrong with this test? Does anybody see something wrong with this test right here? Hit me up in the chat. Does anybody see what's wrong with this test? In the chat, not in Slack right now, in the actual chat of YouTube. And some people are saying no at test. Some other people are saying it's in the same class. Exactly. Yep. So these are good. These are good answers. This is just a standard method. It's not a test because it's not annotated as a test. It's in the same class, which is not the right place for it. It's in the same package, which is not the right place for it. However, it does, otherwise it's fine, right? Because it's, it is essentially doing the stuff that's in a test. It's just not in the right place, and it's not actually tagged as a test. All right. So hopefully that gives you some insight into what went wrong for most people in question 7. Let's look at probably question 9 next, because we're gonna run out of time. Let's see. Let's look at question 8 real quick, actually. Okay. Question number 8 next. Here you can see a lot of people did well on this, almost 40%. But you can see that other people had various problems. The main problem was not properly subclassing savings and check-ins account. Okay? That is the main problem, is people didn't really seem to understand inheritance very well with class diagrams. And so I'm going to go over that. I'm going to look at a couple different individual answers real quick. Let me put that on the other screen while I pull up somebody's answer to go over. I don't want to show you who that person is. All right, let's look at a good example real quick. Okay, here is a nice example. All right, here we go. Banks have accounts. Customers have accounts. Could have even have banks have customers, but not, I didn't take anything off for not having that. And these accounts can be of 2 separate types. They can be checking accounts or savings accounts. Okay, so this is the subclass arrow that many people missed. So there's an account. A subclass of that account is a checking account or a savings account. 2 different types of accounts. And that is where the vast majority of people got off track. They didn't understand that this arrow meant a subclass of this account. Is there any question about this correct solution? Let me know if you have any question or comments about this correct solution in the chat. Looks like most people are okay. Well, I'll give you another second to think about that while I am looking for an example, something to maybe talk about. Let's see. Just gonna pull up one. one. That one's a little too off track. Right. Almost there. Okay, here's a good one. Now, here's one where we had some issues. Can anybody tell me what's going wrong in this particular one? Does anybody see a problem? And this was pretty typical of what people were doing correctly. Hit me up in the chat if you see a problem with this particular example. What do you think the problem is? No, somebody knows. The arrows are the wrong colors. There's a diamond going from savings checking to account. Anybody else? All right, we're getting some great answers. Yeah, the comment, there's a diamond, there's composition instead of inheritance is a good summary. So this account should be a these should be subclasses of this account, but this diamond makes me think that it's actually kind of part of this account. So I want to show the relationship that this is a subclass of the account, and so I would have liked to see a big arrow here instead of a diamond. Okay, so there should have been an arrow here instead of a diamond, and that's a big. This has a much different meaning, right? So this diamond right here should have been a big arrow up to the account, and in fact, it probably should have been drawn under here just to be clear. It's weird to draw it out of the corner like that. Okay, so that should give you an idea of what went wrong on that. Any questions on that particular question, which was question number, I believe that was 8. And while you're thinking about that, I'll open up question number 9. Let me know if you got any questions for that diagram question. All right, so this one was to create a user story for Uber, and as you can see, a lot of you did well on this, 34%. Only 6% of you were so off base that it was incorrect. Many of you, though, were missing the "so that" phrase. Okay, so remember the user stories have a certain format that you could just copy and fill in the blanks, and if I were you and I were taking an open book test, I would have definitely looked for the format of a user story and I would have just filled in the blanks. And it seems like some of you didn't do that. That was part of it. But a really big part of it was people were giving me user stories that were too high level. Okay, too high level. And by that I mean they were basically like an idea for an app. They weren't an idea for a feature or like a small part of an app. They were an idea for the whole app. Okay. And so we're going to dive into this a little bit. Let me open up a few examples for you off screen here so I don't show off anybody's grade. Here we go. Now let's get a couple examples here. All right. Crap. Can't use that one because it's actually maybe I can. Can't. All right, I'll have to try one other one here. All right, some people put their names on these, so I can't use them. All right, see a name on this one, so let's go for this. All right, so here's a typical problem that I saw with these. So we were supposed to create a user story, and a user story implies that is something that is lower level, something that you would make if you were at Uber, like for an individual feature. Okay, a key point of understanding what a user story is understanding that you would never make a user story for a whole app. You would only make user stories for like features or parts of an app or things like that. And so a couple of you bringing up, maybe I misphrased this a little bit, and I will, again, that's something I will really work on for the next exam. But I think, if this is the only thing you got wrong, don't worry about it. You're going to be totally fine. I mean, this is not a huge deal. This is just something I wanted to reiterate with y'all. Is that you don't make user stories for the entire app. You make user stories for features, for very specific things. So this is more of like a high level thing. You could have done a user story for Uber to, like, you could have said something like, as a user, I want to see nearby cars so that I can book a car that's nearby or something. And that is similar to like a, overall story for Uber, but it's very specific to like, oh, well, I want to do exactly this. It has to be low enough level to be something that you could actually implement, right? This is not something that I could implement, or it is something that's not clear what I would implement. Like, I want to be able to go places that are too far to walk. There's too much you could potentially do with that as a developer if you give them that user story. Now let me show you one that's a little more specific. Go. All right. Here's one that got full credit, and it says, as you can see right here, as a user, I would like to receive a text notification when my car driver has arrived so that I know when to leave my house and meet my ride. Okay, so you can see that that's very specific. It's still super related to Uber. It's very specific, something that you could implement as a developer or consider implementing in the course of a story. And that's more like what I was looking for. So you don't want to make a whole app. You want to make some small part of an app, feature, things like that. All right, so there's that one. And in general, the reason I went over that one is just because it was a little bit lower. But if you ever get a question that's like, hey, make a user story or make a X, you should always look up an example of that X, and especially if there's a template before you do it. The only other one I think I wanted to go over is this question 12 and adding a button to your group's app. Okay, so the vast majority of you, considering considering the other questions, kind of got this correct. You can see 64% of you got this correct. First of all, excellent. It's great that 64% of you were able to just very quickly make some changes in your local repository and just do that. That is great. That makes a professor happy. Way to go. The other, 36% of you, understand, some people have some technical problems and stuff, and I understand that, but it's very suspicious that at this point in the semester you cannot get the code up and running on your machine. It's very suspicious that you are perhaps not contributing at least as much as you should on your group's app. Okay, so that's something I really want you to work on in the next week. Please, please, please get that code up and running on your own machine. If you don't have that code up and running on your own machine, there's no way you can contribute. If you can do anything in this class, that is what I would like for you to do. The grading matches that. If you can just get the code running on your own machine and do some changes to it, that goes a long way towards getting a good grade in this class. Now, couple things I saw in lots of people's projects. Some people were showing me the screenshot of things that weren't in the emulator. Like you would show me the screenshot just in a designer. Okay. I'm not interested in a screenshot of the designer. I wanted to see the actual emulator of the phone. And that is kind of encompassing these two things. Some of you did not show me the code or XML that's related to the button. You know, I really wanted to see, especially the XML that made that button happen. Some people changed the wrong thing, and some people were so far off that they were just incorrect. If this was you, you really need to, again, get that code working on your machine. Now let's look at a couple examples here. Again, just to show you kind of what it looked like in case you had any questions. Get this off screen so that I can show you a couple examples. All right, so these are gonna have people's names on them. It's gonna be difficult. I'm gonna show you a good one first. So hopefully people that got a good grade don't mind having their code shown. For instance, here we go. Here was a good one. I'm getting both of the things here. And here is kind of what I expected to see. You can see here that a button was added, and this is the XML behind the button. You can see, for instance, that the text of the button was changed to the person's name, and you can see that in the emulator, this is a screenshot of an emulator, that button shows up with the person's name on it. Okay, this is exactly what I expected to see. Shows me that they have things going on in Android Studio, and that their button shows up. And also, by the way, it shows me that they look like they've done a pretty good amount of work over here. So that's great. Any questions on what I was looking for here? Let me know. I'm going to see if I can find, while you're thinking about that, I'm going to see if I can find one that I can share that didn't go quite so well. Doesn't have somebody's name on it. Okay. Making sure this doesn't have anybody's name on it. All right, so here's an example of one that didn't go quite so well. Who can tell me what's wrong with this one? Anybody in the chat, let me know what's wrong with this one. Right, so on this one, there's no name in the button, and there's no XML behind the button, and yeah, it's not really clear what they were trying to show me here. So, you know, that's kind of how these things went. They were either exactly kind of what I was looking for, or they showed me kind of random other things. That's kind of how that one went. All right, so that brings us through, you know, all the ones I wanted to talk about. There are some questions. I know people had questions about 14, and 14 was either you got everything in the right order correctly or you didn't. It was an all or nothing kind of question. So if you got even one thing out of order, it made me think you didn't understand how get worked. And so one thing out of order equals a wrong answer here, just so you know. The rest of them, though, I think, you know, y'all did pretty well across the board. Remember, exams are supposed to be harder than the projects, so this grade of 80 is about what I was hoping for and expecting. So I'm pretty happy with this class and how y'all have done. That's great. And so now I want to go ahead and open it up to y'all for any questions that you might have. This is going to be the official end of class. If you don't have any questions, you know, feel free to get out of here, go work on your project, or go relax something. If you have any questions, let me know right here in Menti. And that is the right answer for question 14. Clone repo, edit code, stage, commit, and push. So let me know in Minty if you got any questions, and I will do my best to answer. The first question that we have today is, how you doing? And I'm doing pretty good. Thanks. Somebody's asking, when is the next project deliverable? My answer is, wouldn't you like to know? In all seriousness, the way that we do project deliverables is there is an expectation that you guys and gals are working on the projects at all times. I reserve the right to have a project deliverable whenever I want to, giving you as little as a few days notice. So you should just be working on that project, on the average 2 times a week for the semester. That's how you guys should operate. I will give you, deliverables over the course of the semester that prove to me that you are working on them, but I reserve the right to just tell you about them whenever I want. An upcoming deliverable, maybe not the next one, but an upcoming one will be a short video demo of your project. Okay, so that will be one that's upcoming, so please start building towards that. You're going to want to create a short video demo of your project working. Can we go over push versus commit? Absolutely. So push. Here's what happens. You have a local repository. You have a repository that is exactly the same as the one that is on the server, okay? They are the same. When you want to commit to your local one, you do a commit. So I make some changes. I have some files. They're changed. I stage them. I commit them. And that means my local repository has that new commit. Now, the remote repository, the one on the server that everybody can see, doesn't know anything about that commit until I do a push. And I push from my local repository to the remote one. Hope that helps. What are some good answers to question number 1 on the midterm? Question 1. Check. Question 1 was, in what situation would you recommend using the waterfall process? For question 1, some good answers to that were like, if you're doing something like a medical device or something that's high risk, you want to get it right the first time. If you're doing something that you already know kind of exactly what you want to make, like it's something you've made before, you just want to make another one, so the requirements don't change a whole lot, those are good answers. So requirements don't change a lot, you don't have access to the customer a lot, and it's high risk, like you only want it, it's got to work the first time. Good question. For the Project 3 assignment, on question 2, what would be considered above and beyond? Sometimes I give an above and beyond category for people that have really gone crazy, like done excellent above and beyond work, and I have a very high bar for that. So, for instance, I remember somebody had like 10 screenshots of mock-ups and Trello boards and, graphic art, and it was clear that they had done a ton of work on their project, and that they were driving it not only in the mock-up stage, but in the graphics art stage, and in the code stage, and in the organization of your team stage. So they had been doing like a ton of work, and it was clearly like 2 times as much as other people had done across the class. So that's kind of the bar for that. And I just do that to reward people that have really gone crazy on the project, because I really like to see that. That's how that's how I really got into computer science. One project I just went crazy on. I spent a couple all-nighters on it. I don't recommend all-nighters, but I just got really into it and did it, and that's what hooked me on computer science back in the day. So I like to reward that a little bit. Will there be time to learn more about source control workflows, best practices for merging, using branches, feature creation, and Yeah, I think we can try and have another, talk about how to best use Git, how to use different workflows, things like that. It's something that you should check out on your own as well. But maybe we can fit in an extra lecture about that. A good point. Maybe we can do that. We have 3 projects for this class as in the syllabus. So are we done with projects? Absolutely not. Nope. Projects are ongoing till the end of the semester, and the expectation is that you continue to commit on the order of 2 times a week for this project, and there will be deliverables for that you'll actually have to turn in at certain points throughout the semester. Those deliverables will just help me to verify whether you've actually been doing this. They'll come in different ways, like like the ones we've had so far, or demo videos, or whatever else. So you need to commit 2 times a week throughout the semester. Somebody said, I actually had a typo in my JUnit test. If fixing the misspelling makes the code work, can I get points back? LOL. You can try and if you have like a very small problem that costs you lots and lots of points, you can submit a regrade request, but just know that I'm super stingy with regrade requests because they don't irritate me, but they cause me extra work for sure. The way I run class is that I'm trying to determine who's going to go in the A bucket, who's going to go in the B bucket, who's going to go in the C bucket, and then of course who's going to go in the D and F bucket. So I don't think a couple points is going to really change what bucket you're in, and I wouldn't worry about it too much if it's just a few points. Now, if I miss something and it's going to change like 10 to 20 points, maybe that'll make a difference, but short of that, I wouldn't worry about it. There's plenty of chances to get back in that A bucket if you've fallen a little off pace. Somebody's asking, do we have a final? Well, we don't have a final in this class. We have 2 midterms. So you'll have another midterm, which is from the content starting now, well, until the end of the semester. So it's just another midterm. It's not a final, just another midterm. If we have a specific question about our grade or a question, should we email you? Nice joke. Thank you. But is Slack the best way to ask you? Absolutely, Slack is the best way to ask me. Remember, I'm not super excited about individual questions about grades. I will absolutely answer them, but I want you to know that unless it is a major problem, like if it's a big difference between what you should have gotten and what you did get, I wouldn't worry about it because again, the grades are between 90 and 100 and 70 and 80. They're big buckets. I wouldn't worry about a few points. I'd worry about if there was like a 20-point problem. Yeah, we need to worry about that. But if there's like a 5-point problem, I honestly wouldn't worry about it. I'd just put your effort into working on the project. If our midterm was in person, would you have required us to do stuff with Android Studio? Just curious. Aha. That's a great question. I don't know because that would be tricky to do in person. But actually, that's something that's been great about doing these kind of remote things is I've been able to ask students to do stuff that I couldn't before on exams. And I think this kind of thing is very important. You need to learn how to use Git. You need to learn how to use Visual Studio or Android Studio. So I don't know what I'm going to do when we go back to in-person, to be honest. I really kind of like this format, personally. Somebody's asking, if we pass both the midterms, would there still be a chance of failing? You can do the math on the syllabus. I believe, oh man, what are the midterms worth? Let me look that up real quick. Midterms are worth, the grades on the midterms. Midterms are 30%. So absolutely, you could still fail if you pass both the midterms because the project is worth 60%. Okay, so that project really matters in terms of your grade. Um, so yeah, if you can definitely still fail. Somebody's saying at the end of the semester, let's say the app works but not fully, is there still hope for passing? Absolutely. As I've said before, the project is more about the journey than it is about the destination. It's better if your app works for sure, at least if it does something in the end, but you could still definitely pass if you're doing regular commits. You could still do pretty well. Somebody's asking, what if you didn't notice that we had to take a screenshot of the XML for the button? Could we ask for a regrade? What if I didn't notice? I'm not sure I understand this question, but like if you had submitted XML and I for some reason didn't see it, then you should ask for a regrade. If you didn't submit it, then you shouldn't ask for a regrade. Sorry. Somebody's asking, can you talk about what we needed to write for why it's best to use a version control in a group setting? So this was just the fact, at a basic level, this was when you use version control in a group setting, you need to have a place to store your codes where everybody can get to it. And so that is your remote repository. It saves the code, it saves the different versions of it, and so everybody can get to it. Something like that would have been fine. Syllabus says the project grades in 3 iterations, and there are 3 basic iterations. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna do like project grades like we've done. I would consider the deliverable we just did as kind of our first iteration. We'll probably do 2 more kind of 2-week periods of work, and then we'll call it a day. The 60 points are just an accumulation of all your deliverables added together. So pay attention to how many points each deliverable is worth to decide how much effort to put into it. All right, that's all the questions for now, and I gotta run to my next meeting, so I'm gonna have to say see y'all later. Great questions. Thanks for all the questions. Again, I'm pretty happy with how y'all did on the midterm. I think y'all are learning a lot. Keep it up, and I will see y'all on Friday. Thank you.